Hi everybody, in this video I'll show you how to analyze a cartoon. Maybe you need it for school or for your studies, or you just want to impress your friends and family with your awesome abilities. Either way, let's go. Whenever you analyze a cartoon, you should follow these 4 steps. First one would be describe what you can see on a picture level, like on the page. The second step only is the actual analysis, where you say what elements stand for and what it all means. Then you should say what is the message. If you sum up what you have found in the cartoon, what is the message of this cartoon? And as a last, sometimes optional step, you can evaluate if you think the message, for example, comes across nicely, etc. I have brought you an example today and we'll go through this step by step. Let's look at that first step in more detail. You should describe the cartoon. What does that mean? Well, you should start off with an introductory sentence that says who drew the cartoon, other details, where it was published, etc. And it should say, of course, what topic this is on. Then you will go through the elements in the cartoon, and these could be textual elements, there could be like labels, etc. But also there will be different elements in the picture, people, animals, whatever. The language, if you're not a native speaker, some of the things you need to remember is you say at the top, at the bottom, in the foreground, in the background, on the right, on the left. Another phrase you can use, a good phrase is the cartoon shows, or we can see, etc. on the cartoon. Let's take a look at this cartoon that we have got here. First of all, this cartoon was drawn by Cal, who is the cartoonist for The Economist, and it was published in The Economist on November 21st, 2020. What can we see here? Well, first of all, we've got an arrangement where there are 2 boxes, a smaller box on the left and a bigger box on the right. And on the left side, we can see that we have a dragon. This dragon is spitting fire at a person who's holding up a shield. And this shield is labeled Hong Kong. We can imagine Hong Kong then is the full world. Then the person says, hello, Democracy Defense Department, and is obviously trying to call somebody on the phone. On the other picture, we see 3 persons and a fire truck, a fire engine. One person is standing on top of the truck and is holding the fire hose and trying to extinguish a small fire that the other person who's standing on the ground is trying to light with his matches. So he's got a number of matches, and in fact there are so many matches that a lot of them have gathered on the floor there already, and he's continuing to try to light up the fire truck. There's another person with sort of a gown and this crown on who's trying to help the person on top with the fire hose. So he's lifting the fire hose to help that other person there. The fire truck is labeled Democracy Emergency. In a second step now, you would do the actual analysis. So you will look at the following questions. What do these visual elements stand for in the cartoon? And how does it refer to reality? And this is often connected, of course. And a cartoon often uses symbols for things or countries, etc. Comparisons, stereotypes, it labels things, etc. And the final question is this cartoon ironic or humorous in a way? Not all cartoons are, but many of them are. Let's look at the cartoon now with these questions. If we look at this cartoon, it makes sense to start with one of the boxes. Let's start with the one on the left. The dragon is an animal that is often used to represent China. And because this dragon is spitting fire, we can say that it's a form of aggression, a form of attack. And this makes sense here because this China dragon is attacking Hong Kong. We know that there have been movements in Hong Kong where they are opposed to Chinese influence, and it seems that the person calling there is trying to get help for their opposition against China, so trying to support democracy within Hong Kong. And this is why this person is calling the Democracy Defense Department, which of course here in the cartoon relates to, or what's meant is the United States of America, of course. This is why in the second picture we have the person taking the call there on top of the fire truck. This person is obviously Uncle Sam. We can see this because of the star on the hat and the typical striped pants and the beard. So it's the typical appearance of Uncle Sam, but as a fireman, of course, and this is why the hard hat that firemen have. He's being helped by, on the ground there, by the Statue of Liberty. And I would say that the Statue of Liberty, in contrast to Uncle Sam, represents the values that Americans have. So democracy, freedom, equality, etc. And at the back of the fire truck, trying to set it on fire, we have, of course, Donald Trump. So because of the haircut, we can see, because of the facial features, we can see this is Donald Trump. Donald Trump here is trying to set it on fire repeatedly. This is why there's so many matches that have already fallen down. And what this means in the real world is that Donald Trump does things that undermine democracy, that put democracy into danger. So that at home in the US, the government or the institutions have to fight back and have to stop him from setting democracy on fire, so to speak, so from harming democracy. This means that these institutions are busy working against their own president and stopping him from setting this truck on fire. An interesting point is that the fire here he's setting, he's not using a bomb or a gasoline or whatever. He's using matches, which are of course not effective because the fire hose is strong enough to stop this fire. So that yes, the fire can be contained, but it's still strong enough and a problem enough that it keeps Uncle Sam busy, and the Statue of Liberty too. So the American values, the American intellect also has to deal with that problem and cannot turn to other problems elsewhere in the world. This is why then America cannot make a huge effort to help Hong Kong, because it is so busy at home defending democracy at home. I would say that there's a strong irony to this cartoon, because it is ironic that American democracy is being set on fire, not by Russian interfering, not by terrorists or whatever, but by their own president. So that Donald Trump is doing damage to his own country. And this damage is so that it limits his government's resources to promote American values abroad. The next step then would be to look at the message that the cartoon gives us. There are some clues here you could look for. You could, for example, see, are people presented in a particular way, positively and negatively, for example, very angry, very friendly, etc. Are qualities exaggerated? So is a person that is normally tall represented as being super tall, very big, etc. Or does the cartoon make fun of a person? Often this is the case. Often there's a person that is being ridiculed in the cartoon. And I think it's really good advice to, if you want to get to the message of the cartoon, think of the political issue that it addresses and think of the typical opinions on this issue you can have. And often if there are two sides, it's very easy to see which side the cartoon is arguing. A last one, and this is also a piece of advice, is sometimes you will find that you cannot really say exactly what the message is because you have some questions left unanswered. In this case, in your analysis, you can address these questions. You can say, well, some statements lead, or some points on the cartoon lead me to believe that. On the other hand, it's also interesting to see that, so you can try to explain why you are not 100% sure what the message is. What message can we take from this cartoon? I would say that definitely Donald Trump is being presented very negatively, Uncle Sam positively, he's trying to stop the fire, and China is presented very negatively, trying to attack that sort of helpless person who's only got a shield to defend herself. I would say the message is Donald Trump is causing harm, not only in America, but for the entire world, by undermining or attacking or endangering democracy in the United States. A last and sometimes optional step is to evaluate the cartoon and give your own opinion. And the questions you could ask then is this cartoon effective in presenting its message. Does this message then come across nicely and easily and clearly, or do you really have to look at the cartoon and be really super well informed to understand it at all? This would be something you could criticize. And finally, if this is part of the task you're given, you can give your own opinion on the topic and on the message and see if you agree with the message that is being given here. Let me do this for this cartoon here. I think this cartoon is very effective in saying what it is trying to say. It's very effective in showing that what Donald Trump is doing is something that is against American values, and that this limits America's ability to help other countries become more democratic. I personally would say I agree with the message that is given here. I agree that the fire that Trump is setting to the fire truck, so the trouble he's making there, is sort of manageable for America. So we can see here also in the cartoon, in his opinion, this fire is not too big, and he's only using matches. He's not using gas or whatever. So while it is true that this fire can be contained and can be limited and can be dealt with, what is also true is that this limits the ability of, here in the picture, Uncle Sam, but America and American government to deal with troubles in other countries that regard democracy. My first thought wouldn't be Hong Kong, but Hong Kong is a good point. But what about, for example, African countries? If there's an election in Africa in a country where it's disputed and where the leader is trying to disregard an election, how can you say as an American that this shouldn't be done if your president is doing the same thing at home? So I think this message that really it's not only a domestic US problem, but it's turning into a global problem, what Trump is doing, comes across very nicely in this cartoon, and I would personally agree with it. All right, I hope I was able to help you a little bit with how to analyze a cartoon. You can take a look around on my channel. There are tons of other videos on English related stuff. See what you can find, and I hope to see you here again soon. Goodbye.